I never thought it would be under a circumstance exactly like the one that we're in now. We are about 10 minutes away from what we are told is this meeting of the entire GOP conference. Are you hearing anything from any of your GOP colleagues, people that you talk to, about what the heck they expect to go on in that meeting?
I'm not, Aaron, and I'll tell you, in the moment on the floor when it was all over, I mean, it was as though a bomb had gone off in the room. Nobody knew what was next. And I've seen a couple of my friends on the other side of the aisle since then in the gym and elsewhere, and they are just bewildered. I mean, I think there's a realization dawning on my Republican colleagues that they may have an unmanageable conference. And if the management does what Speaker McCarthy ex-Speaker McCarthy tried to implement, which is to sort of give everything that is asked for to the MAGA extreme, it becomes untenable. So I think they've got some fundamental structural issues to work out, because I just don't think that group is governable right now.
It certainly doesn't seem that way, but it's interesting that you describe those that you've seen post the vote as bewildered. I think that's the feeling of many in the country. I mean, you can't have a functioning government without a speaker, right? You can't do anything, any business where you are. It comes to a complete standstill.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as you probably know, there was a sort of a last-ditch effort last night to reach out to pragmatic Democrats to say, hey, stand for the institution. And we gathered in caucus this morning because, look, we've shown that we're more than willing to bail McCarthy and the Republicans out of disaster. We did it on Saturday when almost every single Democrat but one voted to not shut down the government. Only half of the Republicans voted for it. We did it a couple months ago when we prevented a default by voting for McCarthy's deal with the president. But what you heard in the caucus this morning was, hey, look, we will not allow chaos to reign. But sadly, Speaker McCarthy has bought absolutely no goodwill. You know, both times that I just mentioned when we waded in between, he went after us brutally, blamed us for this and that. In the caucus this morning, people were telling the story, and it's still an open wound about him standing up on the floor when we were attacked on January 6th, and a week later going to Mar-a-Lago to bend a knee to the guy who catalyzed January 6th. So
and that came up this morning in your meeting of pragmatic Democrats. That still was a reason that people said they won't support him now.
Well, so that's probably the big epic tectonic reason. But, as recently as the last couple of months, McCarthy and McConnell and Schumer made a deal with the president about spending numbers. And no sooner was the ink dry on that than he's back here writing budget bills well below that number, by the way, which he can't even pass in his own conference. So my point is that, somebody like me, I would love to reach out and yank us out of this chaos. But for that to happen, we need to get some pretty substantial things in return. And the kind of extremism that we've been watching for these last 9 months is not the kind of environment in which we step in to save them.
So, all right, I understand what you're saying, and I think the detail is appreciated by anybody watching. But as you say, you've been more than willing to bail McCarthy out. You talk about with the debt. You talk about with the shutdown. The reality of it is, of course, is that now you might get someone to the right of McCarthy. You might get someone more extreme than McCarthy himself. Are you worried that might happen and that it may, in retrospect, have been a mistake for pragmatic Democrats like yourself not to bail him out this time?
Well, I would say two things. Number one, we don't have any control over what happens inside the Republican conference. That's for them to figure out. But I can make two observations to answer your question directly. First of all, there are 18 Republicans in congressional districts that Joe Biden won. And if you think, and by the way, 18 is what, 4 times their current majority? If you think that those very vulnerable Republicans want to see more extremism, I think that's wrong. And secondly, the model is there, Aaron. In the last Congress, again, I mentioned the shutdown, which we averted with bipartisan. I mentioned the debt ceiling, which we averted working in bipartisan. Look at the last Congress. We got a bipartisan infrastructure deal done. We got, health care for our veterans exposed to burn pits. We got the CHIPS Act done. Nancy Pelosi's majority at the same time was exactly the same size, and we did that by not vilifying, by not bending to our most extreme elements, although I don't think we have anybody quite like Matt Gaetz in the caucus, and reaching out. If they can figure out how to do that, they will govern, and they will be rewarded by the American people for being functional.
Well, we'll see.